You're either Nexus or you're against us. You know, this was hands down the worst SummerSlam up to this point. The only thing that comes a close second is 1993. But spoiler alert, this show is getting an F just simply for the fact that they just were rambling on. They just squandered this entire show. What could have been potentially one of the greatest moments in history of WWE, where we build up a couple of new guys and then instead you just flounder them, and it's just been a huge disappointment. I'm gonna spend most of my time talking about the Nexus angle, so I'm just going to knock out everything else out of the way as soon as I can. Dolph Ziggler and Kofi Kingston have their match for the Intercontinental Championship, which leads into no contest because the Nexus invaded and attacked everybody. This was just why this was kind of dumb. I mean, Nexus already looked somewhat tough, so this kind of just made no sense. But fine, it was just another way to push the Nexus angle that was gonna happen later on in the show. Alicia Fox versus Melina for the Divas Championship, the match that made the Funkadactyl Cameron a WWE superstar. This is what inspired her, right? Well, this match was pretty bad. Melina won. Congratulations to Melina winning in her hometown. And then Late Cool Interrupter setting up the Divas Unification at Night of Champions. The Straight Edge Society versus Big Show. Luke Gallows, Joey Mercury, and CM Punk. Dude, they look like jobbers, like just by looking at them. And this was around a time where, CM Punk went bald. He had a mask on, but then Big Show embarrassed him for whatever reason. CM Punk wasn't even medically fully cleared, which really showed you how badly, they needed CM Punk, but they just didn't want to push him to the top. It just made no sense, and it just became super toxic, which eventually leads to the pipe bomb the following year. But man, 2010 CM Punk, I don't know what he did to piss off the McMahons, but he was just brutally annihilated in 2010. I mean, he started off pretty strong. He was like the cult leader in the beginning. He had a great series of matches with Rey Mysterio, and then afterwards they just did not know what to do with him. And this was further proof of it, because all it was is Big Show beating the crap out of these guys, and CM Punk running away. He didn't even stick around for the finale. He just left. Well, obviously it was part of the story, but they made him such a coward. The previous year, he headlined against Jeff Hardy, and then it was going to set up his feud with The Undertaker. Now he was a jobber at this point. Before we move on to the next thing, Miz cuts a promo about whether or not he was going to be the 7th member of Team WWE. At the last minute, he says that he will, because he's the Miz and he's awesome. I already knew some shenanigans was going to go down as a kid, and I was just like, is it? And I'll talk more about Daniel Bryan when I get to that part. Randy Orton versus Sheamus for the WWE Championship. This started off as a decent little match, but for some reason, Sheamus just had to always win by DQ. I hate these DQ finishes. They just take you out of the match. And then at the end of it, Randy Orton just RKO Sheamus through the announce table that did not break. And then Randy Orton stays tall. He looks strong, but at the end, Sheamus is still your WWE champion, so that meant nothing in the long run. So it really took you out of the match. Kane versus Rey Mysterio for the World Heavyweight Championship. I'm gonna be honest, this was the match of the night, but it wasn't even that good. Something about Rey Mysterio and Kane, they have good chemistry. Big man, little man, they just have a decent chemistry, and this was further proof of it. The whole story is Undertaker was sent in a vegetative state. We don't know who it is, even though it was clearly Kane. Kane tried to frame Rey Mysterio, takes the world title off of him, and then this match happens. Kane wins, like I said, solid match. He was gonna bury Rey Mysterio, and then the Undertaker pops out of the casket. The first time they open it, it's empty, and then they beat up Rey Mysterio some more. And then they open it, and then it's Undertaker popping out. And then Undertaker is about to beat up Kane, but then Kane gets the upper hand, tombstoning him because he was in a vegetative state. He's weak now, and this was stupid. But now the one thing that everybody wants me to talk about when it comes to SummerSlam 2010. Team WWE versus the Nexus. Now, I'll be the first to say pushing 7 guys at once was never going to work. However, the fact that none of these guys came even close to a high potential, the only one was Skip Sheffield, and that's only because that was Ryback later on. But Justin Gabriel and Heath Slater had potential of being solid mid carders. They did a good run as tag team champions. They just didn't really go anywhere. David Otunga, who I learned to appreciate a little bit more as time went on, he really knows his stuff. And I don't know, David Otunga. I don't see him as a world champion, but I saw him as a decent like top main event player. Darren Young and Michael Tarver had no right being here. They weren't even close to ready. Darren Young should have waited until like another season to be on that NXT Rookie Series reality TV show, whatever the hell that was supposed to be back in the day. And then of course the leader Wade Barrett, who I don't believe should have been the world champion right away, but I think he should have been a world champion at some point in his career. He looks like a star, he talks like a star, he acts like a star. He just his presence was there, and he had good promo skills. He was like the best one out of the NXT season 1 series. But then they have a match against John Cena, John Morrison, R-Truth, Bret Hart, Edge, Chris Jericho, and what was supposed to be the Great Khali. Miz comes out. John Cena says, no, 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 no. You know, we all made a decision. We couldn't make you the last member, even though you were last minute gonna choose at the day of SummerSlam. So that's why we all collided and decided to choose Daniel Bryan as the 7th member. So then Daniel Bryan comes out to fight off his former brothers of the Nexus. And something told me in my heart, I was 11 years old, and I was like, okay, Great Khali's out. I think Daniel Bryan might come back. I remember thinking that, and this is before I knew about dirt sheets and stuff like that. So I was like, it has to be Daniel Bryan. I'm like, it would be very poetic. And keep in mind, this is an 11-year-old thinking this. And at the time, I didn't know that Daniel Bryan got fired because choking Justin Roberts with a tie. I genuinely thought that Daniel Bryan left the Nexus for reals, and then they were gonna bring him back at SummerSlam. That's how I thought everything was gonna go down. However, I didn't know about all this backstage politics back in the day, and it really showed me you how much potential people had on Daniel Bryan. He was a good babyface. Later, we knew him as the Yes Man. It's actually kind of awkward watching a Daniel Bryan early match with him doing kicks and no one's chanting yes. But he definitely had a good showcase. He eliminated Darren Young right off the bat, and Michael Tarver got eliminated at some point. But it really showed you that the Nexus really should have been Wade Barrett, David Otunga, Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel, and Skip Sheffield. Just those 5. That's what would have been the Nexus. And then they could have had, like, Wade Barrett had this big ego, and then eventually they turn on him. Skip Sheffield becomes Ryback. Slater and Gabriel can continue on their tag team run, and then David Otunga could be maybe corporate Otunga, similar to what he was with him and John Laurinaitis. Like, they had potential of making these guys recognizable and memorable, but instead they were trying so hard to push 7 guys, and then they just gave up midway and then buried them. And they had a good showing of like all these other guys, with Skip Sheffield eliminating both John Morrison and R-Truth. Jericho and Edge having arguments with John Cena, and then eventually that leads into John Cena and Daniel Bryan on their own. Miz costing Daniel Bryan the match. And then at the end, we're like, okay, it's Justin Gabriel and Wade Barrett versus John Cena. So naturally, my instinct was, okay, John Cena's going to eliminate Justin Gabriel, and then Wade Barrett is going to cheat and get his victory. I thought that's the route that they should have gone with. And then they could have done this whole thing of like Wade Barrett's like, I did it by myself. Nexus, you guys need to get your act together. That's why you guys will fight for your spot in the Nexus. Like, they could have done that, because the following Raw, they do all the members of the Nexus having singles competitions, one tag team match against all of the WWE team members. And if any of the members of Nexus lost, then they are banned from the Nexus. But Why did they bury them right away? Having John Cena making Wade Barrett tap out. You already lost the momentum for the Nexus, and you wanted to continue on having John Cena join the Nexus. If anything, they should have had um, Wade Barrett versus John Cena at Hell in a Cell later on, and be like, oh, loser leaves WWE, and then you could have built up because the Royal Rumble, mind you, was in Boston, the TD Garden. Imagine if John Cena made his comeback there, wins the Rumble, and then at the main event is Wade Barrett versus John Cena for the WWE Championship. I already mentioned that I didn't want Wade Barrett to be WWE champion right away, but you kind of put yourself in a position where you had no choice but to make him the WWE champion right off the bat. It eventually would have hurt him because he wins the WWE championship and then he goes to tag team divisions and IC divisions. So like it is unfortunate, but like I think deep down with the Nexus, you could have had them fight these guys and then go for mid card gold. I mean, look at the Shield, look at the Undisputed Era, two great factions that we all know and love today. They didn't win the main title right off the bat. They went on for mid card gold, and I think that was a big problem. Like, yes, it was the Nexus invasion, but you could have had them win singles gold before you eventually made them WWE champions, and that was been always a big problem for me, where people win the WWE championship and then they go back down to IC titles, US titles, and tag team gold. Like, it happened to Sheamus, it happened to Bobby Lashley, it happened to all these greats, and I unfortunately, uh, it could have happened to Wade Barrett. My big problem with Nexus is that they try to push so many guys at once, where in reality they could have done it with just five of them, and then have Daniel Bryan do the same storyline, betraying them, and then eventually coming back. They've kind of dropped the ball, and it's crazy to me that the most successful Nexus member was Daniel Bryan, the guy who ended up leaving um, the Nexus after getting fired. For me, John Cena not putting over the Nexus really, I mean, he's admitted that he was wrong, and they've tried to make it up for it because after this, John Cena goes on a big losing streak at SummerSlam, rightfully so, but the Nexus just, they had potential of being something great, and it just never amounted to that. And it is unfortunate, and it hurts this show overall because there was a lot of stupidity, and then there was a bunch of stuff that didn't matter because the only thing that mattered was the Nexus winning, which didn't happen, which is why I'm giving this show an F. There was some solid wrestling here and there, but not to the level that it should have. And they just dropped the ball with everything. And it's one of the biggest what ifs in WWE history. This, even the WCW invasion was a big what if. They just dropped the ball with this. And I was just very, very disappointed that they did that to the Nexus. And it just sucks for them. Anyways, I'm going to move on to 2011. It's going to be a much better show, luckily. And, well, take care, everybody.